Good morning, everyone. This is the August 28th IPython Dev Meeting. We're going to have probably a very short one. A lot of people are right now traveling in various capacities. Brian, Thomas, Matthias, and Damien are all unavailable because of various travel things. So we only have a few things on the agenda. Min, do you want to start talking about NB format 4?
Yeah, so last week we talked about the possibility of doing a shim thing for backward compatibility for NB convert, like we do for the message spec from IPython 2 to IPython 3 to make the transition less painful for people with custom NB convert templates. And I think that's going to be... It's not going to be feasible to do a perfect shim.
Mm-hmm.
So simple things like the PNG to the PNG MIME type, those should be fairly straightforward. But there are a lot of little things that I think doing a complete shim is not feasible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the question was, is it useful or a good idea to do a partial one for kind of the most common things people are likely to actually use, or is it better, or is it not worth having a shim if it's only partial?
So can we do a little rundown of exactly what questions are what kind of categories of data can be shimmed and which ones can't, so that we understand better. Because if nothing else, we're going to have to document this. So whether the breakage is partial or total, we're going to need to document what works and what doesn't. So
and partly, I'm not entirely sure on how to do the shim.
Mm-hmm.
Like, should you need to explicitly ask for it, or I guess not. If it's going to be useful, you have to not. It has to be done automatically, which seems, I don't know. Which I guess would suggest the code belongs in NV format. That the shim is just always there.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you read a notebook, that if you read a v4 notebook, it has these shim properties for v3.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not my favorite thing, but I guess we can do that. So the easy ones are like PNG maps to PNG MIME type.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Whoever else is typing, go ahead.
But things like the display type filter,
mm-hmm.
If you've got display type filters, so for simple access in your templates, that's relatively easy to shim. But like the display type filter, say, I want to display these MIME types. After in v4, those are actual MIME types. In v3, those are not. Right? It's just PNG, it's JPEG, it's SVG, and in v4, it's just MIME types.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything. We don't have special magic shorthand keys for anything anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just shims in access on the notebook structure, it's shims in configuration all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a lot of confidence in my ability to do that correctly. Because they're kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
So no, maybe we should ping the list or something about how much custom templates there are that people are using. Because if strongly custom NB convert output is something that only a few advanced users are doing, I'm not sure it's worth the significant complexity of the shim?
Yeah, if it's beginning to look like it's going to add a significant amount of complexity into the code, uh, I mean, we may not be able to support it. The It's always that eternal balance between kind of user space and our ability to maintain a code. Adrian, hi.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Hi. Good to see you guys.
We might be able to put some of the logo discussion on the agenda then, since you're here.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that sounds good.
Perfect. Wonderful. Did your moving and setup go well?
Yeah, I still don't have internet, so working from coffee shops, but
Yeah, we see the background.
yeah.
As long as you can hear us well, that's good enough.
Yep.
Okay, good, perfect. So, Min, maybe the idea of putting this quickly on the list is a good one, so that we get some feedback before you embark on a complicated expedition of creating something that may actually end up being too brittle anyway. Yeah, it may be. Why don't you just summarize the issue on the list, and we try to get feedback from people who may be using this, and if nobody speaks up, we'll go with the simplest solution possible.
Okay. And the other thing is we can finish the NB format PR, and because you can always add the shim
Later,
in between merging and a release.
Yes. No, master. If master does funny things, that's okay. I mean, it's one thing to say that master should work. It doesn't mean that master should always be sort of the most convenient thing if you're in the middle of shifting things. That we've never made that promise. So yes, absolutely. We shouldn't delay. That PR is complicated enough and has been simmering for long enough that we should just get it done.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
I think that's the gist of it. Oh, there was one little question that I asked while going through stuff. Does it make sense for stream output to have metadata?
For stream output to have metadata, it feels that I was thinking about that one. It feels a little weird to me in that up until now, our model of stream output has been very closely aligned with the Unix model of streams, which goes back to basically how C defines streams at the core of a main C process with standard in, standard out, and standard error. And it's kind of the same conversation that we were having recently about metadata in file systems, right? The Unix model of files and streams is a very, very simple one of just streams of data, streams of bytes, and so I don't know. I'm not. That part of me makes me think we should keep metadata off of it. On the other hand, it is true. We do know that has limitations, and we are trying to make a very metadata-rich environment in general. All of pretty much every chunk of data that we have in the notebook at the cell level, at the output level, at the whole document level, there's always kind of almost the expectation of having metadata. So I'm not sure that the argument of kind of a 40-year-old Unix C/Unix Kernighan and Ritchie model should be the overriding factor in deciding this. And I think we could decide to say, well, we can make that available. Now the question is, what would be the actual use cases of that, and how would people encode metadata in there? Because the standard ways of getting data on those streams is just to say print or print to standard error, right? And so I don't know whether it'll be a very natural thing to need to say, I want to print with metadata. On the other hand, encoding information, additional formatting information, I don't know.
Not since it's Unicode,
It is unique. Okay. Yeah, we're not. Okay, that's one way in which we've already deviated from the Unix model is we're not doing byte streams. We're actually doing text streams.
Yeah. The reason to, like, a logical thing I might put in metadata is, like, if we start timestamping outputs.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's okay. potential advantage of stream outputs having metadata is that it means all outputs have metadata. So you can just say, if I want to put metadata about every output, whether, and it may not be something that we do, it may be something that folks like K-Base, higher level things that wrap notebook. The only reason, I don't think there's a reason to specifically add metadata to stream output. The reason for stream outputs having metadata, to me, is more uniformity across outputs.
Yes.
So it's the question of, does something that will just probably pretty much always be empty make sense for the uniformity across outputs? Hi, Doug.
Hey, Doug.
Hello, Doug. How are you? Can you hear us, Doug?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Good to have you. Thanks for joining. We'll
You
put
bet.
we'll put Jupyter Hub on the agenda now because we saw that you have to leave a little bit later, so that we have a chance to discuss things with you right now. Okay.
Great.
So let's finish this discussion on streams in favor.
Yeah, and there's a minor detail question. So if we do want metadata in the stream output, do we want them in the messages as well? And if so, there isn't really an API for setting metadata, and I don't. That doesn't really bother me because I feel like this is mostly going to be used by front ends doing custom document authoring rather than kernels doing stuff.
Well, that was my question though. How would people use this? Do you think that it's something that would be done at the sending level? Because, for example, if you want timestamps to be accurately recorded based on when they're generated, you might want those to be generated at the kernel level. So you might have a custom kernel that overrides its sending of stream outputs and tags them with metadata.
Yeah. So that would suggest adding the metadata key to the content of the message.
Does anybody? It's been mostly Min and I on this one. Does anybody else? Doug, to loop you in since you just joined in, we're kind of pondering whether to add metadata fields to the stream outputs. So streams are basically standard out and standard error, which right now have a very kind of old school Unix model of they're not bytes, they're actually Unicode, they're text, but they're basically just standard out and standard error pretty much. And we're wondering whether to allow metadata, which isn't very Unixy in a sense, but it's a little bit more consistent with the rest of the model of the notebook, allowing you to tag metadata kind of everywhere you have data. And whether we should go for kind of purity of the old model or uniformity of our model, and we're kind of pondering the trade-offs. And if you have any thoughts, be happy to hear.
I look forward to seeing what you do.
I'm sorry?
I look forward to seeing what you do.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Is both for the messages and for the on-disk format, are we going to allow the absence of metadata? So if you have to have that key and have to have an empty string there, or can you allow not having that at all? Because that adds a level of complexity in reading. If we don't allow it, on the other hand, it'd be annoying to have this metadata field that's not used by anyone or by most people, that's always there and just sort of adds noise to the messages.
Yeah, it adds a few bytes of noise to the messages. It adds a line of noise to the file format per output. But I mean, that's the real. We're adding a capability that we're probably not going to use. Oh, just dropped Fernando. So that's kind of the question. Is even less the pure Unix-ness. It's adding a capability that we might use, but that we don't. And things like adding metadata, we added metadata in the middle of the lifetime of v3 in some places. That adding metadata is something that we could do without a major notebook revision. That would be a minor revision. So if we waited until somebody wanted it, we could also do that. We could also, like Paul indicated, we could also say, like, if the metadata is empty, not write it, so that there isn't noise. That's quite a explicitly allowing things to be undefined is tricky. It's not hard. We do have places in the message spec, and we do have some optional keys in a few places, and we have found that for things that are allowed to be undefined but are rarely undefined, we always assume they're defined. That we've had, they're shrinking presumably, but we've had lots and lots of bugs in the Qt console and the notebook that are the result of this key that we assumed is always defined is actually only defined 99% of the time. So we never wrote the code handling the messages to allow it to be undefined. We could, in NB format, say, it may not be defined on disk, but by the time it's in memory, it's guaranteed to be defined, which would mean by the time it's in JavaScript, it's guaranteed to be defined, which would make that simpler. We would need to have that code everywhere. I don't know. Thoughts, opinions, anybody? Anybody care? Anybody leaning ever so slightly in either direction?
Ever so slightly for symmetry. I like the idea of them all having it.
Okay.
Yeah, the argument of uniformity and symmetry is a strong one. On the other side, we've tried to be very strict about saying let's not add things to the format and let's not add things to the various pieces of the system, the UI, the protocols, etc., where we don't actually have a demand, where we don't actually have a specific person, a specific use case that says I need this right now because I can't do what I'm trying to do because this is missing.
Mm-hmm.
And the truth is we don't have that right now, right? On the other hand, for us, the cost of making changes in the format of the spec is rising rapidly. So,
but the cost of adding metadata, like the cost of adding a new key, is not that high. When you add a new key, it'd be a minor revision.
Sure.
Because we added metadata as a minor revision in the last round. We added metadata to display messages.
Mm-hmm.
In between of 13 and 1.0, I think. I don't remember exactly when, but it was after releasing NB Format 3. We did a minor revision that adds a new key. And adding a new key is much less problematic than changing or removing a key.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not a huge amount of pain to add a new key.
And because that we've been, every time we break that rule, we tend to regret it. I've become increasingly fond of respecting that rule. I'm leaning towards maybe documenting this on an issue, and it could be even an issue that we just open and close, just to record this fact. That way, if somebody ever asks, we can go there and say, okay, if somebody has a concrete problem where they say, look, we have this awesome thing we'd like to do, and it would be great if this was possible, and right now this is what's making it awkward, and I'm hacking it by sending a 1-pixel GIF as a display, as a hidden display field, and encoding the metadata in it so I can fish it out again on the way out, or something like that, then we can reopen that issue and uh, and uh, and add it.
Sure.
But maybe right now it's one of those things where the value of the uniformity compared to the fact that every last bit of implementation that we add has cost makes me think we should just stick to our guns and stick to the rule of until we have a very specific need. There's always the possibility that when the use case pops up, it has a little twist that we're not thinking of right now, and so we're going to have added it, and it's actually not even going to solve the problem in the right way.
Sure.
So let's go with that.
Makes sense.
All right. Okay, so we have that Jupyter Hub, Doug, and Min, and anybody else who has.
So I put that down there to ask. I was curious how things have been going, Doug, with Jupyter Hub.
Well, I've been using it. It's been up and running nonstop for about 48 hours now, so this is looking really good.
All right, that's exciting.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, and you notice the lack of a logout page. Yeah. Right now, the hub part still only serves one HTML page.
You can never leave.
That's what incognito tabs are for, right?
Hub California.
Yeah. So next week we're going to talk about what pages the thing should serve and all that stuff. But
I've been working the last few hours in making it so that it'll be easy for me to share things with students, but also make it so that the server will also act as an NB server, so that students and I can share a notebook without having to invoke NB view.
That's actually something that we've been already, Min and I at least, already talked about it here as something that would probably be an immediate desire of the multi-user would be, I want to be able to share this and view it without having, and because it's running internally, I don't want to have to upload it to GitHub separately and then put an NB viewer link and whatnot. So that. If you prototype anything, that would be great, and let's be in close conversation on that topic because we probably will want to do. I think that's going to be such an obvious and immediate need that we may have to put that actually as part of the MVP, like basically in the next couple. That might have to rise in priority to the level of we can't ship without it.
Currently, I have a prototype that says if you have something in a public directory, then it is accessible to the outside world, and it will just render it as a HTML. But if you put a little question mark, well, let's see. By default, it will just give you the raw data. But if you put a question mark view on it, it'll give you the HTML. And if you put a question mark download, it'll just download it.
So you're doing that by calling NB-convert yourself. You're not running an instance of NB viewer.
no, because
Actually,
go ahead.
I'm just using the Python code. This was a question I asked yesterday and in the mailing list, and Jake answered it with just a few lines of code, and that seems to work out very well.
That's where that question came from. So that you would be okay. I got it.
Almost all of the code of NB Viewer is about downloading notebooks from the internet.
From GitHub and whatnot.
There's no reason to use NB Viewer for just local file system stuff.
Yeah. So let's call it a viewing service, not NB Viewer the code base, but a viewing service.
Yeah, just another URL path.
There's a little bit of issue about what to do with custom JavaScript and custom CSS, and being able to make be able to find those libraries. And I haven't wrestled with that at all yet, but that might be something for one of you guys to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a bit, because in my tests, I know that my custom JavaScript and CSS and notebook extensions all do load properly. I don't quite know the details of how require and stuff can go wrong to be sure what is going wrong, but I don't know.
The only issue is the code is asking for those files,
Yeah.
and a web server has to be able to know where to find it.
Right.
No, that issue, I think that issue of making it easy to share things that have custom CSS and JavaScript is popping up everywhere. That one actually pops up also in the NB viewer context, in the public NB viewer context. So we're going to want to have a good answer for that. I actually think that's a topic that specific topic we should make a note. I'm going to copy this into the agenda of the dev meeting next week, because honestly, I think that's kind of an important one in general.
The other aspect that will be very useful in a class is to be able to sort of share a file so that it's easy for the students to end up with a copy of that notebook in their own space.
Mm-hmm.
So I also added a little question mark copy. So if you click on the link when you're logged in and you're viewing a notebook that's shared by another person on that server, it'll just copy it over to that logged in user's subdirectory. But that isn't quite working yet, and I've been talking to Min with the issues about how to get the logged in user ID.
Yeah, there's some difficulty. Yeah, there's some difficulties with the login contexts in every various location and everything. But yeah, that should be doable. I think that is more the model that we had that Fernando and I had talked about, was that one user can share, say, make a notebook available, and then other users can look at that, and there's a download button, and there's basically exactly what you're talking about. There's a button to download it to their viewing machine, or a button to copy it into their single user context. So yeah.
And I think, to me, one of the question is how to define what is the right UI and model for defining the scope of what is shared, so that, for example, are you trying to share one notebook in a directory? If you share, should it be automatically always assume that you're sharing at the directory level? Do we have a notion of project, and that project can be something where you have to walk up, basically potentially walk up further in the file system until you find an enclosing point that defines the project scope in the tree, which is sort of the Git. That would be the Git model. So the Git model is you can't share anything until you walk up high enough to find the root node of the directory tree that corresponds to the root node of the repository tree, and that's the unit of sharing that Git understands. The subversion model is you can share at the directory level, you can clone out at a directory level, and the sort of the old style RCS model is you can kind of lock and copy files at the individual file level, right? And so I think we need to carefully think about what is the model that we want to expose here, so that we're not reinventing something that gets too complicated. And in as much as possible, I think for this first round of the hub, what we're trying to say is, by and large, we're just going to expose whatever the Unix machinery under the hood lets you do, right? We're not going to try to invent a layer of database and permissions and project definitions that overlaps in weird ways with what the file system would do. We sort of want to mostly say, if a user logged in as themselves could cd and ssh and type cat and grep and type less in those files, then they can do the same thing through the UI, more or less. But matching those with an easy UI is something where I'm not completely sure what all the moving gears are going to need to be. But at least for a first pass, in the interest of keeping this not too complicated, I think that basic Unix model is sort of what we have in mind. Do you think, Doug, that that's going to give you enough of what you need, at least for now, until we can tackle something, learn a little bit from concrete usage for a few months, and have some breathing room? Do you think that kind of the basic Unix model, simply exposed with a couple of URL patterns, would be sufficient for you? Doug, I don't know if did we lose you, Doug? Doug, Min, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. I think we might have lost Doug.
Doug, it seems like we lost you.
Right.
Okay. Well, does anybody else kind of think that that's a reasonable path. Okay.
Kyle asked about installation.
Yeah, so I guess I was wondering what was the. Are we just relying on whatever the user has in their path? Like, and whatever's on the system packages, so what's system wide, and then if they configure their own environments.
Well, and they'll have to expose. I mean, I think what we said was that we don't want to get right now into the very complicated and thorny discussion of interacting with with what we're calling environment managers, whether it's virtual env, conda. R has a new one called packrat. These things are popping up like dandelions out there. These kind of things that are somewhat orthogonal to the package managers of whether it's the package manager of the platform or manual package management systems. This notion of environment management is happening more and more. And I think what we said was, let's not try to get into hooking into those things directly. What we can do is help people and make it easy for people to define kernels that may be connected to their environments. And since users can define their own kernels, if somebody created a conda environment and they want to associate that with a kernel, it will be possible to do so. If they want to have a packrat environment or a Python virtual env, they can associate a kernel with that. They'll still have to do it manually, but it'll pop up in their kernel list, and they can switch to it. And since kernels can be activated by individual users in addition to kernels that are visible at the system level, I don't think that constrains anyone unduly, and it lets us take a step back from the current churn that is happening around kind of the many technologies that are popping up left and right on environment management.
Yeah, so I think packaging and the environment stuff is always going to be hard. What I'm really curious about is in the context of the multi-user server. So if a student is provided a notebook, and they want to run with something, they're going to run into the normal package maintenance stuff. So I guess on that level, are we expecting that someone is maintaining the system packages on wherever the single notebook servers are launching from?
Yeah, I think for now that's the answer. And initially, I think the usage is going to be in small to medium-sized environments where likely there's going to be kind of a standard collection of packages and one or two kernel environments. Maybe they have a Python 2 and a Python 3 and maybe an R, and that's it. And everybody is using mostly the same libraries and packages, so all the notebooks kind of run with the same stuff. And honestly, I think right now we should say if people want to, do users in that system want to share some kind of work that requires manual installation of things, they can tell each other what they installed, and then they can each add that kernel spec. They can share. They can email that kernel spec file to each other and put it in their kernel config area, and then it'll show up on their environments, and they can know that when they're using this notebook, they do it that way. I think we should leave that a little bit manual and pedestrian for now, and not try to engineer into the system a massively complicated thing where I can share this and it's going to magically bundle up your dependencies and find your environment and recreate that at the other end of the sharing line. No, let's kind of stick to the Unix model for sharing the actual data, and then the notion that if you have an environment management approach, you can specify that for yourself, and you can tell the person that you're sharing it with what you did, and they can replicate that at the other end. And once we have more experience with which patterns of those work well, we can see if any of that makes sense to kind of rise to the level of what the UI officially supports. But for now, I think those knobs are available to people. We're not preventing anyone from doing anything. We're exposing enough that all of this is possible, even if it's a little bit manual and pedestrian. I think we should keep it at that level right now. Does that seem sensible, Kyle?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else on Hub? All right. Let's switch to the NBViewer 313. Who put that one up? Min or who did? Min?
It was me, but Min's already entered the PR.
I'm sorry?
I was going to discuss it just in case, I didn't understand what Min was going for and what I was going for. And this was on our URL paths.
And by the way, it says the build failed. Do you guys think the failure is a real one, or?
Yeah, well, it's a test of something that is a test is actually failing. It's just unclear whether the test is testing something that should work or not.
Okay.
Yeah, I can make the user thing omit. The two choices I see here are the user expression can know that GitHub doesn't use dots, or we can just say if you want to enter a URL, it has to start with the protocol. Those are the two ways that both of which fix this problem.
Yeah, so I'm the one voting for sticking directly with what GitHub says is their username style, and then
do they like say here is our what we?
I don't remember where I pulled it up. You know, I'm so bad for not linking that.
Because if it's like here's the regular expression we use for users, which obviously they're allowed to change at any point for whatever reason.
Raises everything up.
There are actually quite a few repos that and we've had this issue a few times, that you can't view with NB Viewer. In fact, my IPython tutorial, you can't view. I had to rename it because NB Viewer can't view the URL because our regular expressions are too strict. On repo.
The repos were more open.
So it makes sense for it to be .star or .plus for repo names.
I feel like I tried to create a GitHub account, and that's how I tested it.
Yeah, that tells you, that at least gives you some amount of blacklist.
New org. Org name. Username may only contain alphanumeric characters or dashes and cannot begin with a dash.
Okay, that's good enough.
Yeah.
If you don't think that, I can change that here.
I'm gonna add the picture then, just cause.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
On to my subject?
I think so. Yeah, these two guys seem to be happy with their conversation. So now this is the long and delicate 6235.
Yeah. So everything that we talked about, I've basically implemented, and I'm just begging for reviews now.
Okay.
So when you guys get a chance. That's all I had to say about that.
Every time I talk to you.
In the fab file.
Oh, for Windows. I was developing on Windows, and it doesn't work.
Okay, so those changes shouldn't be there.
Should I open another PR for that, or just not even?
You just commented out everything.
I'm sorry. What are we talking about?
Oh no, that's accidental.
Yeah.
That's accidental. Can you put a little note there?
Yeah.
Just so I don't forget that.
Okay. Did you ping Brian and Jason directly for review on
No,
that?
I haven't yet.
Okay. Brian is meeting with Jason today.
Oh, okay.
And so or did, because it's in the East Coast, so by now it's like 3 p.m. there, so they may have already finished. But he was meeting with them yesterday and today. And so what I would do is I would put a quick ping to the two of them there on the PR, and maybe they even have a chance to discuss it while they're there, or maybe even send Brian a quick text and see if they have a minute. Yeah, if they have a minute and they're available, it might be worth you hopping on the phone with them for a half hour if they're available and doing a little bit of that, because Brian is there today. But today I think is his last day at Bloomberg. So.
Is he going to be in New York for the rest of the week? Do you know?
No, he's flying back over the weekend because the dev meeting is next week, right?
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, unfortunately, we're going to miss you at the dev meeting, but
yeah, I'm going to be in New York next week.
Exactly. So you guys are rotating, and I'll be in New York in October.
Nice. I'm going back to New York in 3 weeks.
Oh, that's right. Your first trip is not to Bloomberg; it's the second one. Okay.
Yeah, the first one is vacation.
we'll keep rotating through Bloomberg every 2 weeks, which is good, which is very good.
Okay.
But yeah, I would ping quickly Brian and Jason in case they have a window of time and they want to look into this with you while they're together. They may, for all we know, they may be already looking into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Matplotlib?
Yeah, real quick, I just noticed the Matplotlib 1.4 release notes, and they have a new Qt5 backend. And actually, the way they did it is they sort of reshimmed things so the Qt5 is kind of now the official Qt backend, and the Qt4 one has kind of adapted names so that they can run on the Qt5 APIs, but they said that it doesn't work yet with the IPython PyLab support. So it's probably pretty straightforward because I can't imagine the event loop. I mean, the only issue is probably one or two names probably changed somewhere. So I think it would be a good idea to have official support for 1.4 soon. And this is something that I would actually, I'm guessing, I could be wrong, but my guess is this is going to be a very, very small and isolated fix. I would backport it as well, so that it propagates, so that if any distro provides updated packages for 1.4, people can update. If they update their IPython, they get the updates.
Yeah, and this is an open issue on IPython as of a couple months ago.
Ah, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Excellent.
Which the person who opened the issue says that something about the way we parse backend text identifiers might be the all we need to change. So we'll see.
It could be even that the code actually works, and we're just kind of artificially
saying, I don't know how to deal with this Qt5
with this thing, even though maybe the underlying code works. So the fix may be even easier than I was thinking.
Yeah. I can investigate that. That should be simple enough.
Yeah, but even if there's underlying API changes, I suspect it's going to be very, very small. They're not going to have changed the entire event model between Qt4 and Qt5. So, okay, I just wanted to raise that one in priority a little bit. Why don't we hop on feedback and discussion for the logo PR that has been open for a while, and we have Adrienne. Adrienne, hi. Thanks for the patience.
Hi, no worries.
Because I know that some of these things were not exactly down your line of thought, but it's good to have you as part of the team in any regard and kind of building common knowledge of all the various ideas. But yeah, let's go to your PR. Do you have any thoughts, feedback? Sometimes it's good, even when a PR has had a lot of comments. We always find it useful to also have kind of these face-to-face discussions that are a little bit higher bandwidth, and we can talk. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, your ideas. How do you think the process is going?
Yeah, I mean, your guys' feedback has been great, and I'm kind of stepping back for a little bit and kind of going back with designs for the logo, because I feel like I was going down a certain path, and that might not be the right one, so I'm stepping back a little bit. But like continue
to be fair, I feel. I mean, I think we've put you in a pretty hard position because none of us has really proper experience with design, and we certainly don't have good experience with creating a design brief that you can work with effectively, and a design brief that is actionable for you is something that we don't have experience with. So I know we've put you in a tough position. I remember seeing a talk at PyCon a couple of years ago about how to engage design in an open source project, and one of the key points that this person hammered, he was a designer at GitHub, and he said you need to have a clear design brief. It's impossible. Designers are not telepaths. They can't read your mind. They can't come up with ideas that magically are going to do what you think would be good. So until you have an actionable design brief, it's very hard. And I know that we haven't given you that with enough clarity. So, but part of it is because we ourselves don't have those skills, and we also haven't we also haven't even completely thought through what this would be. This has always been. I mean, the Jupyter reframing of the discussion is evolving, and the project is evolving thanks to that. So we're kind of making this up as we go, and so hopefully you'll be patient with us.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And like, yeah, no, I feel like your guys' feedback has been great, and I don't know. Right now, I feel like I'm just sort of exploring the different options and kind of feeling out what direction you guys are most interested in.
Okay.
So I'm feeling like I'm getting a better understanding of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm specifically curious that the last bit of feedback. I feel like at the very end, I was finally able to kind of put in my head together what I am beginning to feel is a little bit of a proper design brief, at least from my perspective, which is when I kind of wrote out in more detail what the pieces were and how it ties back to kind of to what extent do we want the planetary and the system analogies to go, and where we don't want them to go too far. Does that help you guide a little bit better? Is that
Definitely, yeah, that was super helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm kind of just taking that information and then kind of starting new with different, just kind of with a different mindset.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions that any of us can help with? Any concrete, any right now, anything else, or do you feel like you just need a little bit of space to rethink based on these last rounds of feedback and come up with new prototypes?
I think just right now, taking some time and just kind of going back to the sketching process based off of the last set, and then hopefully having some more prototypes to upload for feedback soon.
Okay, great. One thing that I wanted you to be aware of is, since next week we're going to have the dev meeting, it means we're going to have a bunch of us are going to be here at Berkeley, day in, day out, from morning till evening together in a room, working all the time. So it will be a very good time to get feedback quickly, because if you have stuff that you want to ping us on, just basically drop it on the PR, and then we can even schedule impromptu meetings like this, where you say I'm available, and we hop on a call for 20 minutes with you, and we would all be there in the room. So it'll be a very efficient way of giving you lots of feedback quickly and brainstorming with everyone in the team.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be there. Brian had suggested me going to the meeting, so I'm going to be
I actually wasn't sure. I wanted to ask you. Okay, was that updated? Oh, that's why it wasn't updated in the wiki that you were actually going to be here. And I thought.
Yeah.
And since I've been meaning to call you separately, and I still haven't done it, so I wasn't sure that you were going to. Well, then never mind. We can actually talk about it here. Okay, so you're all set up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that'll be super helpful to actually be able to talk about it in person.
Okay, perfect. Then sorry about that. That's my own logistical mess. Too many balls up in the air. Sorry about that. Okay, then that's wonderful. That's absolutely fantastic. I wasn't sure, and when I filled out the info on the wiki, can you add yourself to the wiki, please? And then kind of add design. So do here's the page. Let me put on hip chat. This is the page on the wiki. That's the wiki page that has. That's the wiki page for the agenda. So add yourself to the listing and add kind of design into the agenda, so that we put that as a topic for the week.
Okay, great.
All right. Okay. Any
Okay. How much starter cost?
Anything else from anyone, either on the design discussion or any other topic?
I'm about ready to put any of these on a sticker or a T-shirt.
Yeah, no, they're all looking good.
Yeah. No, I think it's coming along very, very nicely, and once as we converge on the idea, I really think Adriana's doing a terrific job. So I'm sure we're going to end up with something that we like a lot. And yes, stickers, mugs, T-shirts, everything.
Right.
All right. Well, it seems like we can end a little bit early today, which is never a bad thing. Any last questions from anyone?
Nope.
All right. Okay. Well, then let's wrap it up. For the record of the internet, we will not have an on-air dev meeting next week because we're having the in-person one at Berkeley. So our next on-air dev meeting will be 2 weeks from now. And then we'll see everybody next week except John, sadly. But enjoy your break, John. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.